Hello! The wizards that conjure the internet into existence have aligned the runestones to bring us live to you from reInvent at the Venetian. I'm A.M. Grabelny, an evangelist here with my friend Abby Fuller, who's a dev advocate on the containers team, and a new friend, Tim Bray. Tim, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, well, I've been working here for 4 years, and I'm a really old guy.
Okay,
So
cool.
I go back to before, the internet and before hot running water.
Before those wizards came
that kind of thing. That's right. Yeah. But I work on messaging and serverless and that kind of stuff now.
Oh, great. Okay, so you work on internal services inside AWS now.
No, I work on the services we build that people use. Right. Yes. I'm an internal type engineer. There you go.
Got it. Yeah, got it. Oh, I'm having some audio issues. Cool. So we're here today to talk about modern application development, and I like to consider myself a modern application developer. I'll let you be the judge of that, Tim.
Fair enough.
You can tell me at the end how I do. But what is modern application development?
So modern application development is a label for which we can give thanks to our analyst relations. Because we go and talk to the analysts about all the great stuff we do, and they keep saying, well, you have 140 services, but no opinions. So what are your actual opinions? And we don't really feel comfortable often telling people which of the things are the right things or the wrong things to use. So what we are doing instead is observing what the really successful customers are doing, and also observing the opinions of our internal engineering groups in the way they choose to build things, and come up with a sort of a set of general principles and talking about modern applications in that context. And it includes things like really no-brainers like use microservices, and then if you want to be, that's not even that modern, but if you want to be really modern, one of them says use serverless wherever possible.
Those are two pretty key buzzwords I hear go around a lot. How would you define a microservice? What is serverless? Give us like a basic intro.
Well, back in the day, you'd put up a database and you'd put up Rails or Django or something like that and do some HTML templating, and then you'd have your application. And it would all be a big monolithic blob. And that would be fine. But we don't do them that way very much anymore. In particular, we don't do them that much at AWS because we have to deploy thousands of fleets and hosts. So the only sane way to make that work is to break your app up into a bunch of different pieces that talk to each other, make requests back and forth, and that way you can revise and deploy and debug and refactor the different pieces without breaking the whole application. And so it's just the modern way of writing apps, that's all, and it's pretty well the only choice. If you're building anything non-trivial these days, you pretty well have to go with microservices. With microservices, right.
Right, sure. Yeah, and I've heard you say before, serverless where you can, right?
Serverless where you can.
What does that mean? What do you mean by that?
So there are some cases where a serverless choice is a no-brainer. I mean, Thomson Reuters has this app where they upload video, and it happens when it happens because they're a news organization, and they have to reformat it into multiple different transcoded video formats, and it was a big hard job because it takes half hour to transcode a half-hour video. So what they did was they used FFmpeg and broke it up into half-second segments and just blasted them into an S3 bucket and had a Lambda wake up when each one landed and transcode that half-second and then glue them back together, and as a result, they got their half-hour transcoding done in a handful of seconds without having to do any capacity planning. So that's a no-brainer.
That's a pretty marked improvement, yeah.
Serverless is the only sane way to do that.
Sure.
Control planes is another example.
Okay.
When you've got a database service and you need to make a new database or start a database, well, do it in a Lambda. That's the right way to do it.
Sure. And then those teams that you're working on at AWS, is that how we build services too? Or are we using?
Pretty well. If you look at our recent services, the ones I'm closest to these days is Amazon MQ, which is a managed message broker. And so the data plane is just MQ, a big old Java program. But the control plane is a bunch of Lambdas, an API gateway, talking to Dynamo. Really simple. There's nothing dumber than keeping a service running around turning electricity into heat, waiting for somebody to say, hey, I want to make a new message broker.
Right.
So,
yeah. I don't know about nothing dumber, right? There's probably some dumber things, but it is pretty useless, right?
Pretty bad approach,
absolutely.
I would say, yeah.
I might be dumber than that, actually.
Well, I have some pretty dull moments myself.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, so does bad work, right? Do we have, or I said MAD. That's how we shorten modern application development, right?
It's making the marketing people kind of nervous. They're not sure that an acronym that you pronounce MAD is really the best approach. I actually like it. I think it's memorable. You know, you only have to say it once and everybody's going to remember it.
We all go a little mad.
We're going to get an Alfred E. Newman buttons to wear around.
Sure.
You've made so many bad puns today.
Well, no, that's a quote. That's not a pun. That's a quote.
It was kind of a pun.
Punish.
And does it work? Well, pretty well. I mean, what we're trying to do is look at the stuff that does work and say, here's how they did it.
Right, and that's we have some. You already mentioned one. What are some other examples? I know Capital One is one that's.
Well, they not only built a really pretty advanced piece of serverless code. It's called something custodian, I forget. But then they went and open sourced it.
Cloud custodian.
Custodian, that's right. But then they went and open sourced it, and I was talking to another company today, not remotely financial, who were basing their stuff on Capital One's Cloud Custodian. So it's really great when the community builds things for each other. That's a really nice outcome.
Okay, great.
They had actually one of the Capital One engineers did a cool YouTube video with us on Cloud Custodian and how you test your AWS resources. And it was a whole segment because I think that's something that a lot of folks in the community want to build for each other, right? So how do you work locally with the cloud? So
I really have a lot of respect for Capital One because they were really brave in saying, as a large, highly regulated financial institution, saying, yeah, we're going to do this cloud thing. And so not only are they doing the cloud thing and getting good success, but it's so great. They're turning around and sharing stuff back out. That's really, I think, the right way to do it.
Yeah. We haven't been fair to Abby here. We've talked a lot about serverless. Which,
we're all friends here.
We are. This is a safe space. Every time I'm on this stage, it's a safe space.
I think also, right, like they're not mutually exclusive.
Right.
That serverless is a spectrum now, right? We had that really pretty graph.
We haven't even mentioned what we're talking about, the containers, right?
Because you're a containers person.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's a no-brainer to figure out.
AM tricked me into this, and he just wanted me to listen to the good word of serverless.
So
but I'm already a fan.
No, I want to weigh in here too on how containers operate within a microservice architecture. Where's the benefit there?
Well, Ben Kehoe of iRobot,
yes.
he's
I know Ben.
a smart, loudmouth guy.
I love Ben.
Got strong opinions.
Yeah, definitely strong opinions. So
Ben.
he says that
great.
serverlessness and containers should be orthogonal. Right?
Okay.
And I think in theory he's right. In practice, not so much, simply because if you need, a small number of millisecond startup latency, you're pretty well stuck in function space at the moment, right? Because if you want that massive concurrency and super elasticity, functions are pretty well where you have to go. But, I don't think that's written in the stars. I don't see any fundamental engineering reason why some, future generations of container technology shouldn't offer the same kind of latency. It's just not a thing they thought about when they were building Docker. Well, now we're thinking about it. Your average Docker container brings a huge chunk of the Linux user land along with it, but it doesn't really need to, I don't think.
I think actually that's what makes things so cool, right? When you're in a space that's moving so quickly, is that you end up working on things like that. That the software that you started using, so Docker didn't just come out of thin air, right? It's based on older stuff. So C groups and jails and zones. So they're Linux concepts that have been around for quite a while, and then we took that and we applied that and said, hey, we think that this is a good way to kind of do modern application development.
Right.
But what was modern 3 years ago is not as modern now, and now we have Lambda, and then it's like, exactly, why can't we have the best of everything? And then you look at projects like Firecracker,
exactly.
where it's all about how fast can we be?
Well, I mean, normally you'd think functions are this fast, containers are this fast, and VMs are really slow. Only they're not anymore. Those guys can boot to a running Linux in under a quarter of a second, right?
Yeah.
So, I can see a future where you have containers and VMs and functions, and which one you choose to pick just depends on the shape of your application, right?
Yeah, that it shouldn't be a technical limitation. It should just be a what shape is my workload, and let me pick the right primitive for that.
Exactly.
But then let's make the primitives themselves as fast and as lightweight as possible.
Absolutely.
We watched Anthony in the Firecracker session yesterday launch 4,000, and the slowest time was 153 milliseconds. The slowest.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So fast, so cool.
I mean, I have to say that I still have an impedance mismatch in my head. The notion of potentially reacting to an incoming HTTP request by spinning up a VM seems like, complete
seems
insane
counterintuitive, right?
to me.
Like
but
it's slow.
It's not really.
No.
You could think about doing
Not
that.
anymore.
Right?
But
That's right.
You're right. Like the traditional idea of a virtual machine is, why would I want to spin that up in response to to a request. I wouldn't, because it would take me a while.
Right.
But now it's not like that anymore.
So now we have to ask the real question is, what is it that a VM is best for? What is it that a container is best for? And what is it that a function is best for? Now that assuming we can take latency out of the equation, which we actually can't quite yet, but
But we're getting there.
Yeah,
We're
that's
working
obviously
on
the
that.
direction we're heading.
So
Right.
we had a question from the chat, Tim. You're a step functions guy.
I'm a step functions guy.
All right. So Grindiok something. I don't know. I apologize for butchering your name. Is there any hope for step functions activity using Fargate?
So, I see. So step function activities in Fargate. That should work. I think if you're talking about having a step functions activity worker that you launch in a Fargate container, I can't see.
I wouldn't see an
That
issue.
should be fine because all an activity worker has to do is poll an HTTP endpoint and.
I don't see why you couldn't. If it's not working for you, I would love to know more about what the
Right.
specific use
Yeah.
case is.
Yeah.
So if you're out there, let me know.
Get at me.
App's easy to find.
Yeah.
So easy.
I'm
here all day.
I had a question for
Sure.
you, Tim, too. I've worked in my career a lot with enterprise, a lot of enterprise financial services, too, and oftentimes you'll find they're chained to a legacy app.
Right.
They cannot get rid of this legacy app. What do you recommend in this instance where I can't get rid of this app, but I want to start building maybe new things or other things that depend on this app in a modern application development architecture?
Right. So the first thing is let's not diss that legacy app, right?
No,
that
it's there for a
legacy app,
reason.
it's there for a
Yeah,
reason. It
absolutely.
represents a lot of value. It wouldn't be there. They wouldn't have it if it wasn't working for them. So let's put some love on that app.
Yeah,
Okay,
no
so
way.
let's talk about how we're going to integrate with it. Typically, you got to assume it's got some sort of API.
Sure.
Empirically, we find that those APIs tend to be kind of idiosyncratic and weird and clunky and hard to use. And it wouldn't be reasonable to ask everybody developing a new app to separately learn how to use the legacy app API. And so you're going to have to figure out how to call that app. What I would say though is that once you've called the app, don't just return the value. Take what you find and drop it on an event bus of some sort. Drop it onto a Kinesis or an SNS or a CloudWatch events or something like that, because then you can launch Fargates with it, you can have it processed by a Lambda, you can do stream analytics on it. And the key point is that once you've done that, then it's accessible for processing, not just by the original app that went to the trouble to write the API call, but
Right.
to anybody else who wants to pitch in and access it. And I'm kind of evangelical about event-driven stuff these days. I think event-driven stuff is really a superior way to do integration when you can get away with it.
Yeah.
Because you get looser coupling between the components, and the person or software generating the event is not married to whoever's downstream. People downstream can do whatever they want with it.
Do you push that to another limit too, where you pair that with functional programming paradigms?
Well, I'm an old functional programming geek. You can see the Elixir sticker right there. See?
Oh, there you
So
go. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why I like serverless too. Stateless functions floating in the cloud.
Right. So
what could be more functional than that? Having said that, the real world's kind of messy,
It is.
and lots of Lambdas go and make all sorts of database calls and are full of side effects, and that's just a fact of life. To the extent that we can write our logic in a serverless way, that's a win. And step functions, by the way, is very much in that ballpark, because the whole idea of step functions is you have a bunch of workers. They could be activity workers or Lambdas, or as of this morning we announced they can be Glue or SageMaker jobs.
Yeah.
And so you can just treat them as things that you invoke that take input and yield output. So you can build stuff in a very functional flavor, which makes me happy.
I think there's obviously a clear impact to the business when you start building this way. But can you highlight what some of those impacts are?
So the interesting question is, are serverless designs better, intrinsically better than others? And we don't know yet. It's still too early. But here's an important point. If the end game that we're aiming for is the only code that you ever have to write is the code that actually is doing business value adds,
Right.
in a Lambda function or in a Fargate job or something like that. And all the other stuff that you used to have to do do, figuring out your Kubernetes flows, picking your AMIs, configuring your web platform, all that stuff. You don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And so you have a finite design time budget, and if you can spend 100% of that working on your code you actually care about, as
Right.
opposed to that other stuff, well, you're going to be doing more design, and you can expect to get a better result.
Yeah,
I think.
absolutely.
So I think that one of the benefits of serverless should be qualitatively better software coming out at the end of the pipe.
Yeah, so to leave you with this, again, thank you, Tim, thank you, Abby, very much. Go to aws.amazon.com/modern-apps.
Modern apps.
To go learn more. There's a Modern Apps tutorial too. I'll do a little plug for myself and another evangelist, Nikki Klein. We did a full Twitch series on building a modern application that you can go check out now too. Thank you very much, stay tuned, we've got more coming for you.